This short presentation discusses the concepts that underlie collaborating for action, presented by Joseph McMahon of Collaborative Processes. The goal here is to discuss how groups can not only collaborate into an action format. There are three principal approaches to this, or three principal elements of it. The first would be, do the parties have a solid collaborative context, a context in which collaboration can really and effectively be undertaken. Next, with that context, the parties individually and as a group need to be making mindful decisions. And lastly, there needs to be a plan to implement, an action implementation plan that moves whatever was decided forward. Starting with the first one, the collaborative context, what we're seeking there is a situation in which collaboration among the proper parties can take place. And that means we need to have representation of all key parties. That will necessarily mean there will be diversity, and the members of this group need to both understand the need for and accept and embrace the ideas of diversity to ensure that all viewpoints are expressed. Beyond that, they need to have a collaborative attitude, an attitude in which they understand that give and take is necessary to move forward, and to be able to communicate effectively and thoughtfully, direct, candid communication rather than some thinner and perhaps polite approach. And then there needs to be a structure, and the structure may be finding ways to orient the parties, to use a facilitator if needed in order to move the process forward. The second context, the mindful decision making, means that the parties consider both the decisions they have to make and the broader, the meta decision, the decision about the decision. How is the decision we must make to be made? That often means that groups are not, in fact, operating autonomously, but need to think of the entire system in which they're dealing with and accept that there are complex decisions that need to be made, particularly on environmental and public policy matters, and that complexity is considered in how to best address the problem. The group should also, both as a group and individually, work to avoid the decision errors, and often that means an express discussion of what those decision errors would be and how they could avoid them. Where appropriate, they should be using the proper decision-making tools that would help them move to the proper implementation of what they intend to make. And then include in the design, as mentioned earlier, a plan for implementation. And lastly, implementation plans need to be executed. And then based upon the initial experience of the parties, there would be experience-based adjustments, in other words, adaptive management. A program often needs to be in place for periodic monitoring and assessment. And where processes are complicated and implementation is uncertain, it may well be that you need a sequential implementation of whatever plan is designed. That may mean an initial phase to test the concepts, followed by a phase 2 or perhaps a phase 3. And lastly, the parties need to be thinking about how they can get the support they need in order to move this process forward and to ensure implementation takes place.